Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cancer Decoded. With me, my partner in this project, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who is going to help us talk through today our latest update on some new developments in cancer research. We'll talk through those. We got an update on the work of Dr. Simon Kagi that we talked about 2 weeks ago, some more promising results from the trial that he's conducting. And then we're going to be joined by an extraordinary American whose story of dealing with cancer is both inspirational and instructive. And we'll talk about how she was diagnosed and how she's dealing with it now in a challenging way, including a very public sharing of her challenges and how she's meeting them on social media. So very grateful to you for being part of the conversation. If you want to get into this discussion and you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. If you're watching on X or YouTube, we welcome you in here. And we look forward to your participation directly in a future episode. Doctor, grateful to you for joining as always. And I want to start with an update. 2 weeks ago, we had your colleague on, Dr. Kagi, and he shared the trial that he was doing with his patients. And at the time, we talked about some very promising results. You've got an update for us on another patient, not the one who joined us in episode 1. But tell us what the doctors found and why it's so encouraging.
Yeah, I think Dr. Simon Kagi was at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach. He just shared with us this week or last week this patient's second MRI. So to give you some context, these are patients with glioblastoma, sadly who have failed the first round of treatment, and there's no other treatment left for these patients with a very poor survival rate. What's remarkable, we had a complete response from the patient based on the MRI after these cycles, and now after the second cycle to confirm that, the patient is still now in complete response. I think that's so exciting from that perspective that Dr. Simon Kagi, as you could see from this image up there, has now taken immunotherapy to a new field of responses. Because of that, we've increased the size of the trial. So the trial is now at Hoag. It's also, patients can call in to cssifm.org and to St. Jude's, in which second-line failure with glioblastoma. Unfortunately, this is a kind of cancer where time is not on your side, and we've increased the trial size to 70 to accommodate the patients who want to participate.
So, Doctor, my usual job of asking for clarification on the assumption that if I didn't totally understand it, maybe others didn't either. What do we know now, or what's suggested that we might know now that we didn't know before?
Well, I think we have an MRI that we can show, but with the MRI that you want to confirm this is indeed a complete remission. It's so remarkable to get a complete remission in this kind of stage of the patient who had failed everything in glioblastoma. And here's this picture.
So we're seeing on the left the before and on the right the after.
The left is the before, after the patient had failed everything. That surgery, radiation, Temidol, then came to Dr. Kagi for this trial. And on the right, as you could see on the left, this little black area called the ventricle, it's all crushed by the tumor. And on the right, you see everything opens up. You see the tumor basically gone. What you see is some scarring. And this to us was a remarkable event that we said we're now going to open this trial to more than just 20 patients. We'll start this in 70 patients. And this will be a very important trial for us to confirm that, in fact, we could get not only partial responses, but complete responses in the disease at year 4, brain tumors, that's never been achieved at this level.
Okay. Very encouraging, and we'll continue to get updates on that study and others. 3 items in the news I want to ask you about. First, yesterday was reported something that is of concern to any family who is dealing with a health challenge and reliant on federal government research or grants to get things done. A lot of scientists have objected to what they perceive as harmful cuts by the Trump administration, and some families. The U.S. Department of HHS, Health and Human Services, announced yesterday that they will resume and maintain funding for 3 key cancer programs at the state level: prevention, screening, and cancer registry tracking. What's the significance of that?
Well, I think it's highly significant. I think what this new HHS, whom I've really been supportive of and still am, is really going after really pragmatic, real world issues. So prevention is one of the most important steps. This is where you, frankly, for the first time, and we are in clinical trials to prevent cancer. We have a trial with this BioShield in patients with Lynch syndrome. We touch on that. We can talk about that later today. The second, with regard to tracking and creating a registry, is important for us to actually understand where these patients are and longitudinally in real world monitor them. So I'm highly encouraged. I'm pleased that these are the three most important things because we need to catch it earlier. The earliest you can catch the cancer, you have an opportunity to cure the cancer.
And is it true that the federal government, there's certain research that's best done or maybe only done by the federal government in these areas?
Yes, I think on a national scale, there are certain things where the federal government has the resources to create this nationally. Um, but I think at the end of the day, the state, as well as the private sector, should all contribute towards this venture.
Okay. A new study published just a few days ago in Cancer Discovery speaks to what is one of the most important issues, which is early diagnosis. We all know that most cancers, the sooner they're detected and treatment can begin, the better it is for the patient's chances of survival and thriving. This new study suggests that certain cancers may be detectable in the blood up to 3 years before current conventional diagnosis. What can you tell us about that study?
Well, it was a very interesting study. You know, what they did is they looked at the circulating what they call a DNA that the cancer itself shreds or sheds basically into the bloodstream. And they were able to find what I call mutations from the cancer 3 years ahead. It's encouraging, it's important. Not only is it important to try and diagnose early, as we just spoke about, but it's also important to monitor post-treatment so that you can actually capture if any metastasis comes back. So no, this is an important study. It's great advance, and they looked at the patient's normal white cells versus the patient's cancerous white cells in the peripheral blood. What this says is the peripheral blood is where the secrets lie. We talked ourselves a thing called ALC, absolute lymphocyte count. That's in the peripheral blood. You can get tumor cells in the peripheral blood. So all these billions and millions of dollars we spent trying to find very sophisticated tests, it lies in your peripheral blood.
So, are we headed towards a world where people can have DNA testing, blood testing, and all cancers could be revealed much earlier in the process?
Not only much earlier in the process to prevent, to actually watch it doesn't come back. And as you can hear from our patient today, that's exactly what she's having. She's having this what they call cell-free DNA from peripheral blood tests.
Right. Okay. Lastly, when I go to my doctor, my regular doctor, what do you call it? My physician. What do you call that? Your GP, my general practitioner, doctor. Pretty much anytime I tell him, "Well, doctor, this is bothering me," he'll say, "Lose weight and sleep more." As you know, like the baseline of helping everything. There is a new study that says exercise boosts colon cancer survival, according to a major national study. Besides saying that exercise is good for everything, what's the connection between more exercise and cancer survival for colon cancer?
You know, I really think we are on the truly flexion point in history in medicine. We really understand that the core of your life, so to speak, of your longevity is the immune system. And the immune system consists of these things called lymphocytes, natural killer cells, and T cells. And ironically, it turns out that to boost your natural killer cells and T cells, we talked about it's sunlight, rest, enough rest, and exercise. All these things are important, including your microbiome. So this is not an old wives' tale. This is very, very real. That what you eat, how you work, how you live, the less stress um, is important to your immune system. And the paradigm change is that all these diseases we face, cancer, infection, bacterial infection, fungal infection, pneumonia, trauma, is basically the collapse of the immune system. And if you can actually maintain a very strong immune system, you're in much better shape.
So when people say more exercise is great, but when people say how much exercise would fit the bill in this case, what are we talking about?
You know, it's remarkable. It's not exercise to the extent where you try to, going to become an athlete. It's really just doing sufficient walking steps, standing, and having within the 12-hour day enough activity. So it's that level of exercise.
Okay. Our guest today is dealing with colon cancer, which is one of the most common forms of cancer in both men and women. Talk about what it is, why it's so common, if we know, and what how it's generally dealt with.
Well, this is a great worry, colon cancer. What I worry about for many reasons, and we won't go into that today, but why are we getting not only more colon cancer, but in younger people? And as I shared in many other occasions, that I've now seen it, and we have colleagues who are seeing it in patients who are 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-olds. That is like impossible to conceive. I have some theories of why that goes on, but let's just talk about colon cancer per se. There's really, in a funny way, two types of colon cancer. One in which the immune system can really see it very easily, and that's called microsatellite instable, meaning the cancer hasn't hidden, so your immune system can go after it. And then there's a type of colon cancer where your immune system can find it. And what's scary is over 80% to 90% of colon cancers are those types of cancer called microsatellite stable. That's a technical term. So what we have today is a challenge to identify it early, to identify it even before it happens. So this is where we have now Lynch syndrome patients. 1 in 280 Americans have this genetic issue that you actually have polyps in your colon that are waiting to become colon cancer, an 80% higher incidence of colon cancer. So on the one hand, you can maybe, and this is where we are now in trials, very exciting to prevent that from happening. On the other hand, we need to detect it early, and there's tests, the CEA tests, and there's where you can look for blood in the stool. But most importantly, we need to go after that 80% of colon cancers from which a tumor hides, called microsatellite stable. Remarkably, all the drugs that we have today in the United States, the checkpoint inhibitors, go after this 15%, not
Right.
other. So the opportunity for us now to address this, and we may have multiple series on colon cancer in our Cancer Decoded talks, Mark. But today you'll hear from a patient that has, I think, beat this disease.
Yeah. Amazing. We'll get to her. I want to ask you one more question. Here's my layperson's question. It seems to me that the two forms of cancer that are, if not the most tested for, are right up there, which would be breast cancer, women having mammographies, and colon cancer, people having colonoscopies. Are those two cancers tested for more than others, or are there others that are tested for?
Well, now you can measure PSA for prostate cancer, as we talked about the last time,
Right?
and then there'll be sputum tests now for lung cancer, and now you see the circulating tumor cells in your blood. So we are in a flexion point where we're getting cancers earlier. You get cancers earlier, you awaken the immune system, you supercharge the immune system, you cure the cancer. That's the future that is here, and I'm very excited for us to have these conversations about that.
Okay. Everyone who's diagnosed with cancer is an incredible human story. And those who figure out how to fight back, lucky enough to get good care, fortunate enough to get good care, and have the fighting spirit to fight back, it's extraordinary. And amongst those who seem to be able to do that with some regularity are athletes. Athletes have the mindset about fighting, about determination. And our guest today, just an extraordinary example of someone who diagnosed and moved aggressively forward to deal with it. So I want to show you a video of Gretchen Miklish. This is number one, please, who's sharing her story both tonight and in general on TikTok about how she's dealing with cancer.
Hi, so I'm giving you an update on how I'm doing halfway through the second round of the BioShield protocol to try to prevent a recurrence of colon cancer. So to let you know how I'm doing, I just ran 5 miles. Well, I didn't run the whole thing. I'm doing kind of a run-walk method, so all you Galloway run walkers know what I'm talking about. I ran for 90 seconds and then walked for 30 seconds. And I just tried to not let my heart rate get up really high during the 90 seconds. And I was able to do 5 miles. So pretty excited about that. So second round has been a lot different than the first round. The first round was 2 shots, start the chemo pills. Everything was new, so my body probably reacted a little more harshly the first time. They told me to expect flu-like symptoms and swelling in my abdomen, and all of that happened. For about a week, I was out of commission. I had a fever up to 101. Anytime I tried to walk an extended distance, my heart rate shot up to like 190. The chemo pills, I was taking a higher dose, and I had really bad GI distress. I had blisters in my lips. It was pretty rough. Second round has been a lot better. I definitely had an immune response. It happened a little faster, so my plane ride home wasn't very fun. But my fever kind of hovered in the 99s the whole week, so 99.5, 99.7. Enough to not make me feel very good, but not enough to make me feel like I couldn't do other things or live my life. So it was much better. And I went down in dose on the chemo pills, and that has been monumental.
All right, and Gretchen Miklish joins us now. Gretchen, people say this to people like me who've been on TV. They'll say, I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you because I've watched so many of your videos, and I won't say you're not unique, because you are, but you're an archetype of people I've met with or have known. You're an athlete, you're a soccer coach, a CrossFit trainer, and you talk about this like an athlete. So welcome, and so honored to get to spend time with you. Explain why you've been sharing your story on TikTok. What prompted that?
Well, to be honest, very early on in my life, I knew the strength of the online community. One of my first jobs out of college, and where I worked for most of my 20s, was America Online. So way back in the 90s, and we were creating message boards and chat rooms and live auditoriums, and I was a part of all of that. And I just knew from early on how strong those communities were. You know, whether it was around, I happened to be in the sports department, but whether it was around health or sports or whatever you were interested in. So I've always kind of gravitated towards looking for information online, like a lot of people do now. And I've had a few instances in my life where the online community has been really helpful. One example is about 6 years ago, my son was diagnosed with narcolepsy. And narcolepsy is a very rare sleep condition. And I went online, and the community that I found there, and the information that I found, and the support that I found was unbelievable. He currently takes a medication that's off label for narcolepsy, and I found out about it in a Facebook group. So when all of this happened to me, the first thing I did was I went online and I searched, hashtag colon cancer. I looked up the different treatments that people were doing. And I just thought that when I was deciding to do this interesting new treatment, that it would be helpful to other people to share about what I'm doing and make it more well known to people out there. And I also have a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old, so they were very encouraging of doing it on TikTok.
Yeah, amazing. Describe, there's a picture for folks who can see of you with your family. Describe, you've only been dealing with this now for seven months, I guess, right? Describe the arc of this. How did you get diagnosed, and what did you do when you were diagnosed?
So it's only been actually not that long. I was diagnosed in early March. So I had been down in Florida. We became recently empty nesters, and so spending some time in Florida in the winter. And I was flying home just for a couple days to Cleveland from Florida to do a few things. And I believe there was divine intervention that I happened to be in Cleveland when all this happened and not down in Florida, because we have wonderful healthcare here. But I just started having really bad stomach pains and ended up in the ER. And I had, blood work and scans done. And what they told me, and I'll never forget this, the doctor came in and pulled up a stool and shut the door. And my husband and I looked at each other like, this cannot be good news. He told me I had something called intussusception. And that is where your colon kind of folds into itself or telescopes into itself. And he said that that was what was causing the pain, and that that is typically caused by a mass. And I was so shocked because I'm, super healthy. I do all the exercising. I eat really well. I don't drink, all the things that they tell you to do. So it was quite a shock. And so I went straight into prepping for a colonoscopy. And then after the results of the colonoscopy, where they saw that I had a tumor, I went straight into surgery. And I had about a 3.5-hour surgery to remove the tumor and a large part of my colon. And they removed 36 lymph nodes.
Did you have pain over the course of several days, or just all of a sudden?
It just happened. Like, I was flying home and I started having pain, and I thought it was gas pains. And then after a couple of days, I thought, I don't think this is gas. And so I talked to my primary care physician, and she said, you don't want to mess around with abdominal pain. When I was having these waves of pain, it was bad. I was in the fetal position. So I thought, this is not good. So that was why I went. So it was really only over the course of a couple of days, and really I had no symptoms before that.
Yeah. And so in the space of going to the ER, you moved without leaving the facility to a colonoscopy and then surgery right away.
Mm-hmm.
So then who did you then get connected to a cancer doctor?
I did. So this was kind of how it all came together. I had my surgery, and then, it takes a while for pathology. Those are those horrible weeks where you're waiting. And they had told me they thought it was cancer based on what they could see in the colonoscopy. So I knew what was coming, but you don't know what stage or anything. So you're waiting. And then you get these texts from my chart now. You have new test results in my chart. And you're like, oh my gosh. So I saw my pathology report, but I didn't have an appointment with my oncologist for like 2 more weeks. So I ran everything through ChatGPT and got everything figured out. And what I ended up doing is just doing research on my own. And I already kind of knew what treatment they were going to be suggesting for me based on what I knew through my pathology report. And I was a little panicked because it all sounded very scary. And so I flew back down to Florida for a week to kind of recompose myself before I had an appointment with the oncologist. And I was going for a walk on the beach, and my brother texted me a podcast. He said, you have to hear this podcast. And that was when I heard of Dr. Soon-Shiong. And so during that time, then I just was meeting with my oncologist in Cleveland, but trying to connect with Immunity Bio to see if this was maybe something that I could do.
So what was the original course of treatment that was recommended to you?
So they gave me a couple options. I was supposed to do either 4 rounds of Capox, which is capecitabine oral chemo pills, plus oxaliplatin, which is an infusion that you get. It's a platinum-based drug. It's pretty harsh. Or that would have been 3 months of treatment. The other option was 4 rounds of Folfox, which is basically the same drugs. It's the oxaliplatin, and then the other drug is just a different version of the oral chemo pills that you would get through a port. Or they gave me the option to do 6 months of just the oral chemo pills. So those were my options, and I had total analysis paralysis, debating which one to do.
Right. And what was your brother inspired by? What had he heard that made him so insistent that you listen?
Well, at that point, I had been diagnosed, and so he knew that what I was dealing with. And when he heard Dr. Soon-Shiong on Tucker Carlson's podcast, he just said, this is something you need to hear. So I probably listened to that podcast 5 times in a row, and just said, okay, this is something that I feel like would be perfect for me.
So where do you stand now in your treatment and in your recovery?
So I've had some really good test results over the weeks. I started my therapy on May 27th. So I flew out to LA. I went to the Immunity Bio Clinic. I got my 2 shots of the BioShield, and I also started oral chemo pills on that same day. And so I do pills for 2 weeks, and then I have a week off. So 1 round is 3 weeks. And I'm just finishing up my second round. So I'll fly back out to LA on July 7th to start round 3. So I'm almost halfway.
How did your Ohio oncologist feel about you doing this?
Well, when I came to my appointment, now I hadn't said anything to him because I didn't know if it was going to happen. There was kind of this back and forth going on. There was an application that needed to go to the FDA and it needed to be approved. And so I really didn't know if it was happening until really right before it happened. So I didn't say anything to my oncologist. And then when I finally came into an appointment and I had a copy of what they send to the FDA, it's a single patient investigational new drug application, I think it's called. I came in with this packet and I showed it to him and I said, well, I'm doing this. And he was a little shocked, like, what do you mean you're doing this? And then once he had the time to read through it and I talked with him again, he said, wow, this is really neat. And what he said that really stuck out to me is he said, this is so personalized for you. And I said, exactly.
Right. All right, we're going to get to your questions in just a bit, either for Gretchen or for the doctor on anything you'd like about cancer. So please raise your hand if you'd like to be part of the discussion. Gretchen, you're an extraordinary patient because you've got a fighting spirit, you're optimistic, you're an athlete, and you're extremely well informed. You've mastered the science of this, which is incredibly admirable and great for people who can do it. What are 3 pieces of advice you give someone who's diagnosed with cancer, of things you've learned that would apply to helping them navigate this?
Well, I mean, you do need to be your own advocate. You really need to do the research. It's out there now. There are so many things that you can find studies. You can find, ChatGPT, I will tell you, has been the best thing. You can find all kinds of information and it can explain things to you. And then the online community, you can find other people going through the same thing. They can give you recommendations, even small little things about, what can help the blisters in your mouth, things like that are so helpful. So those are the 2 main things that I would say, do your own research and look for those support communities online.
Yeah, fantastic. Doctor, what would your comments or questions?
Well, thank you for coming on to share your experience, Gretchen. Look, I think it's really important for us to explain, and if you would allow me to explain the biology of the treatment that you received, Gretchen, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, when we first met Gretchen and I spoke with her, it was very clear that there was an opportunity, very much like we talked about catching the cancer early to a potential curative state. Gretchen is in that stage. And it was very important to ensure that her immune system was strong enough so that if there are any hidden cells that weren't picked up by the surgery or removed or had floated somewhere in the body, that her immune system needed to be strong enough to find it and kill it. So 2 things. And, she's really done an amazing job informing the community in the sense that you need to educate your T cells in your body. So that's one of the first levels of treatment, and Gretchen can speak more to that. But once you've educated the T cells in your body, you actually stimulate them. You have to grow them. And that's what we've also done with the BioShield, so that they're both educated, grown, and can kill. And then finally, and this is about the chemotherapy, this is a struggle. And I'm so glad that your doctor in Cleveland was supportive, because it's a paradigm change. And normally people would either get radiation for breast cancer or they get chemotherapy and radiation, and both would knock out your NK cells and T cells. Now, chemotherapy could be used in a very different way, that if you just use a lower dose, and, this Gretchen talked about CAPOX, which is capecitabine plus oxaliplatin. We felt we didn't need both. In fact, when you looked at the literature, the difference between CAPE alone versus CAPOX, there's very little difference. But yet, empirically, everybody does the same thing. Then we could use a Cape-Ox, the capecitabine, and reduce the dose, which in fact we've done with Gretchen now. As you could see, sadly, these chemotherapies result in terrible things like blisters in your mouth, you can't eat, but more importantly, it knocks out your NK cells. So counterintuitively, it's a different way of thinking. But you can give a low dose of chemotherapy, and this I think is an important statement, because you need to use a chemotherapy in a different way. A lower dose, given what we call metronomically and over time, to what we call flush out the tumor, to really create the tumor in a form of stress, not trying to kill it, so it can expose itself to your natural killer cells and T cells. But that means you have to have natural killer cells and T cells around. And that's why we've asked Gretchen to measure the thing called ALC. I'm curious to know, if you said to your doctor, what's my ALC, what was the doctor's response, Gretchen?
I didn't ask him that, but I told him right away that that was something that we were really interested in. And I do blood work every Monday, and my ALC has continued to rise, which is pretty amazing.
And just so the audience, the ALC again is a thing called absolute lymphocyte count from your blood count, your regular peripheral blood count, just like we talked about. And Gretchen's also measuring CEA, and she's also measuring circulating tumor DNA. So the three tests we just talked about, all from a single blood test. And ALC is called absolute lymphocyte count. It happens to be a reflection of your natural killer cells and T cells. And sadly, we as physicians have ignored ALC, not because we're ignorant or bad, because there was never been a treatment for it in the past. So for 75 years, nobody's actually focused on finding a way to actually stimulate these natural killer cells as measured by ALC. But that BioShield is here now. And Gretchen was also part of the time when we went to expanded access to the FDA. After that podcast, sadly, when it's still growing, we're now close to 10,000 requests. So we wanted to make this available across the nation. But it's not just one shot. It's a concoction of orchestration of flushing out the tumor, exposing the tumor, getting the NK T cells ready in advance, and educating your T cells before that, and making that orchestration work. And that's why we filed this, what Gretchen talked about, the single purpose or single patient IND, which is a process which you have to go to the FDA as well, and it took time, and etc. But we got that through, and I'm happy to see she's really healthy and looks wonderful as a result of this treatment.
Gretchen, you radiate confidence and determination. It's just so inspiring to see you doing it, and we look forward to keeping up with your progress. Let's bring folks in, because I want people to be able to ask questions. And so let's start. I hope I'm getting the pronunciation right. Elena, don't know which it is, but unmute. Correct my pronunciation.
Yes, my name is Elena.
Okay, thank you for joining. Tell folks where you're joining us from tonight, and question for Gretchen and the doctor.
Actually, I'm listening to you every morning as well, and very excited about two-ways community.
Thank you.
I'm passionate about cancer many years ago, because 7 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with myxosarcoma. And when he was diagnosed with myxosarcoma, he refused to do any conventional treatment, as chemo as well as radiation. And because I was passionate about alternative way of treatment for myself and for him, I started to research. And I found very interesting medication. And I would like to know if Dr. Hudson know about, because my husband is already 7 years for this medication, and I become ambassador for this medication as well. And I'm sharing this information to people whom I know and who have cancer. And also because I do the nutrition job, I am doing all nutrition support as well for the people whom I'm kind of telling about this medication. This medication called Rigvir Eco 7. Did you hear about that or not? It was created in 1961 in Riga, Latvia. It was created by immunotherapy professor Mutsenitsa and started to treat melanoma for the beginning.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to know if the doctor knows what you're talking about. Doctor.
No, I've not heard of that. And I think, I mean, I don't know of this medication. Look, I think it's really important that we have a completely open mind to the power of the body's immune system.
Yes.
But it's also it's also important to ensure that the data and the science is
I'll
going
tell you
through
about. I'll
go,
tell
going
you.
through
I
going
will
through
tell you about. Yes.
going through clinical trials so
Yes,
that
I will tell you about. It was registered in the European Union, this medication, in 2004. And Big Pharma closed selling of this medication on 2018. But production is still going on, producing of medication is going on, and they delivering door-to-door this medication to the people in US because FDA not approved here.
Yeah. Do you know how to put things in the chat on Zoom? Do you know how to do that?
I think so.
Okay. Could you put the name of it in the chat? And what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of research with the doctor's help and see.
You can connect me and I will provide any medication, any information about.
Okay. Say the name one more time.
Rigvir. 1 second. I will write it down.
Okay. You're writing it in the chat.
Yeah.
While you do that, I'm going to bring somebody else in, but I want to have a reasoned conversation about it. And we need more. So just give us a moment to do a little research. There's the name right there, Doctor. I don't know if you can see that, but or whether that means anything to you, but we'll do a little checking and come back to it. John, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind for Gretchen and the doctor.
I really appreciate you taking my question, and I appreciate the two-way platform very much. My question is, I have a very dear friend that was my next door neighbor for many years. I'm in Texas, and 2 years ago he retired and they moved to Florida. And just week before last, they came back to Texas to visit us, and everything seemed fine. About 3 days later, he went out and played golf with his son. He's in his early 70s, and he started having stroke-like symptoms. He went to the emergency room and they did a bunch of scans and tests and determined that he had a brain tumor and that it was likely glioblastoma. I had just watched the first episode of Cancer Decoded, where you talked a lot about that disease. And so last Thursday, he had surgery and they removed as much of the tumor as they could. But their next steps are radiation and chemotherapy. And all these red flags went off in my head. I didn't say anything as I didn't that they were in shock, and they're basically relying on the doctors they have to tell them what to do. I guess my question is, if you have that disease or another cancer and you don't have access to the clinical trials or either logistically or financially, is it better just to forego radiation and chemotherapy and just live out your life as best you can, since it seems to be so detrimental to the whole process?
Yeah, John, it's a great question. Obviously, we'd hope nobody would face that choice. But Gretchen, I saw you shaking your head. I'd love for you to weigh in as someone dealt with these kind of choices and then the doctor.
I would be afraid to not do anything, to be honest. I would rather deal with the effects of the chemotherapy and radiation than let things go, just let things go. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Doctor, thoughts? Because I think John's raising something. We're trying to encourage in this forum a conversation that says people should do what Gretchen did, be aggressive and look for alternatives and be open-minded. But John's question is, if someone's not in a position for whatever reason to seek an alternative, should they go with conventional treatment?
Look, I think this, especially with glioblastoma, this protocol called the STIP protocol, which requires, and your friend John has already had the surgery, and the next step is radiation and a drug called Temodor. That's been the standard of care for the last, well, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years. And there are responses. I mean, not only responses, there's some extension of life. Having said that, the glioblastoma, sadly, from those treatments, almost always recur. So we are now faced, unfortunately, with a dilemma because from an FDA perspective, we've been asked and only going into second line, meaning the patient has to first, sadly, fail first line. What is the current treatment? But at least that's a beginning rather than having none. So I agree with Gretchen that he should do what is considered standard of care. Where I'm trying to go desperately and as fast as we can is move it early on into first line, and frankly, even before you get cancer, as we said, in the prevention phase. But being pragmatic for your friend, I would recommend he continues the treatment, finishes the treatment, and pray God he does well. I mean, there's a chance he could do well. And if he doesn't, we're there. And if he doesn't, there's now trials that we set up at St. Jude. It's trials that we set up in Irvine at Hoag, and trials we set up at our Cancer Institute called cssifm.org. So all those, and you go to clinicaltrials.gov, which is a database that shows where the glioblastoma trials are in the country. And there's many trials in the country. Ours is one of the few immunotherapy-focused trials. So my short answer, having complete the treatment, and then most importantly, be monitored very closely with MRIs. That's a good way of monitoring. And if he does get a progression, trials are now open.
John, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, if you aren't close to a facility that does clinical trials, is it possible to do something locally, or is that not an option?
No, that not only is not an option, it's an imperative from my perspective. We don't want people, and people that can afford it could fly anywhere. We don't want that. We want all Americans, wherever they are, whatever their economic status is, to be able to receive this treatment. So my imperative is on a personal mission is to have rural hospitals exposed to this. In fact, I'm supporting a hospital in Windber, Pennsylvania, which is close to Texas. I've got primary clinic places that I'm supporting with people near Dallas and Austin, Texas. I don't know where he is in Texas. But the answer is no. We must create systems where patients, especially with cancer, who want to be with their family and their friends and in the environment to have treatment where they live.
John, we hope your friend does great, and grateful to you for coming on. Gretchen, I want to ask you the question that could send us down the mother of all rabbit holes, but how did your insurance company react to your deciding to seek an alternative course?
To be honest, we really haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet. So I got my initial bill for my surgery, which really helped me hit my deductible. And so moving forward, I'm
Gretchen, I got to interrupt and say this proves my thesis that you're one of the most optimistic people I've met, because you looked at a big medical bill as helpful to reach your deductible.
Yes.
So good.
Well, yeah. So and then I'm still seeing my Cleveland oncologist on a regular basis, and I'm actually doing the capecitabine pills that I'm getting here through the specialty pharmacy. I'm doing all my blood work here, so all of that is going through my regular insurance. So
But did you try to submit your new treatment to insurance, or you're just paying for that?
No.
Why not? Just submit it and give it a try, or
we haven't really discussed that yet.
Okay. All right. Let's go to another question, please. Daniel, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Gretchen and the doctor.
Yeah, I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. and Virginia. I have a 10-year-old daughter who is on a path, hopefully back to health. She was diagnosed last March, not this past March, with osteosarcoma. Um, had a very successful surgery, even to the point of a couple weeks ago on her one year anniversary of her surgery um, was on her swim team helping the medley relay win. So we finished up chemo in right before Thanksgiving, and as it sits now, she has also done the MEPAC immunotherapy, which is not approved in um, America, although there are some exceptions. It's approved in, I think, 27 European countries. So we were fortunate to get her through that. And I was just curious if the doctor had heard of that and done any research on the MEPAC immunotherapy that seems to be generating some good results for osteosarcoma patients. The second question is, we're really focusing on getting her immune system as big and robust as it can be as we sit here today. Obviously, we're trying to eat right, eliminate sugars, things of that nature. But is there anything now that we've gone through? I guess it was a 35-week process of immunotherapy on the tail end of chemotherapy. That what else could we be doing? Um, there's a little anxiety because we're coming up on our 3-month scan from her last one where she was clear. In fact, in her leg she was clear, but I think the majority of the time this expands to the lungs, so we're very cautious of that, from an overall standpoint. So and we've been doing the calculation, and our clinic was like, well, we don't run that calculation anymore. But my wife and I've been, I think, listened to your last Tuesday one where you were given the calculation from the different metrics to come up, I guess, with the ALC. So
Um,
yeah, those are kind of two-part questions.
yeah, Daniel, I'll say we can all hear in your voice what a great and concerned dad you are, and how much you love your daughter, and it's she's fortunate to have you helping her navigate through this. Did you say she's a swimmer?
She is a swimmer. She
Yeah,
actually we actually caught it because she was in a winter swim program. Got to the point where she had been having some pain. She played volleyball, and she got to the point she couldn't swim across the pool, and it locked up. And
yeah.
we thought we were going in for an ACL tear, and then 3 hours later, we're being told she has bone cancer.
Yeah, before the doctor talks about the treatment that you mentioned, Gretchen, I'd love for you to talk about what you know as an athlete and someone who's interested in nutrition. What advice or experience you might share with Daniel for his daughter to combine fighting the cancer as well as continue to be active and healthy.
Well, I mean, it's hard when you're an athlete and something like cancer slows you down a little bit. So I'm sure that's been hard for her to maybe not be able to do some of her activities. But I would say it sounds like you're doing all the right things in terms of improving nutrition, trying to avoid sugar. I think those are the best ways to try to help boost your immune system. And some of the things that Dr. Soon-Shiong said earlier in the podcast about sunlight and rest and all of that. And, I just think that that's the best that you can do. But if she's an athlete, she's going to have that fighting mindset. And it sounds like she's doing really well. So I will definitely pray for her.
Thank you, Doctor.
Well, then I really mimic what Marcus said, and you sound really dedicated and wonderful father. So it looks like she's really on the right track. Having said that, let me share with you some of the questions you asked. And you're right, there are immunotherapy programs now in Europe where I'm not sure which one she's involved in, where they take some of the tissue and they make these things called dendritic cells, and they inject them back. And Europe's had spent a lot of time, especially in France and Germany, where they actually moved very much forward into both cell therapy and activating the immune system. And that's really why I think we now in the United States are not catching up, but I think Big Pharma actually lost their way a little bit when they just did these things called checkpoint inhibitors that took the brakes off T cells. Unfortunately, taking the brakes of T cells when you have no NK cells and you've given chemotherapy and radiation really didn't get you very far. But we're there now today. So first, with regard to the question of how's she doing, I think it is really important to look at two elements, and it's interesting again, where we need to educate those tests results are available in the CBC that you're currently doing. It's called the CBC differential, and it's no more expensive or less. It is there. It's an educational program we now need to relaunch in the nation for patients like you and your daughter to go and ask, what is my ALC level? And Gretchen is now asking that question. And it's one doctor at a time, one patient at a time, one clinic at a time, where you go, look. So she's young, age matters, and that's good. But if her ALC level is below 1,000, you need to boost it. You need to find ways to boost it. To get it above, because what that means is she has less NK cells and T cells, and that's what's going to prevent the return of the metastasis.
What are some ways to boost it? We've been told vitamin C IVs are those things that can help, or thoughts?
Well, so this is my struggle now. This is where I as a physician and a doctor feel for every patient. I mean, if you were my family member and your family member, as you are now, um, she should get the Anktiva shot, because this is the first time in the history of medicine that there's a shot to boost it. And unfortunately, I have to go through, as you heard from Gretchen, these regulatory processes. We have an expanded access program. I don't know which city you live in, but your doctor could request this Anktiva from us under the expanded access program. But sadly, the way this program is now structured, she has to fail first, whatever initial therapy. Ideally, we want to give it to her now to prevent her from failing. But the way it's now set up, she will have to first go through what I call first line, fail, and come to us. I hate it. I understand the
Doctor,
Well,
I'm
yeah.
just, what
What
does
would
that
a
mean? What
failure
does it
be?
mean to fail? Yeah, what does it mean to fail it? What do they have to do to fail? To
it's
blood
so
test or?
no, it's a painful statement. She has to get, believe it or not, she has to get a progression. I mean, I don't know how else to say this without being pained by that, but that's what we've been asked to do
What
with
what does it
regard.
mean? What does it mean, doctor? What does that mean to get a progression?
Well, she's right now, I think, in remission, as I understand it, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We're very cautiously optimistic. We're just trying to be as proactive as
Uh,
possible.
completely. So if her
Yeah.
if her ALC were low, and if I could wave a magic wand with regard to regulatory process, she should get it now. Um, I'm not allowed to do that right now. And maybe we can change that in the future as I talk to the FDA. But right now, if her ALC is low, and it may be low because of all the chemotherapy she's had, she may have had radiation as well. Did she not with the
No, she did
autism?
not have radiation.
Okay, good. So,
27-week program.
right, and she had surgery and she had chemo. So
Hmm.
the two things you should measure, one is the ALC, and the other thing you should measure is look at the neutrophil count. It's a thing called ANC. It's all in the
Yep.
same blood test. Okay, we talked about this last time. And make sure that the ratio of ANC divided by ALC is at least 2 and below. So, look,
And
I think,
that is what my wife did as soon as I sent her the link
okay.
to last week. So she's been in the my chart.
And, and,
And
and, and, uh,
Gretchen,
and
I
then,
feel for you. We're gonna go for about a couple of days between the next scan and the oncology appointment and those charts, and you start reading things right out. We've already had a couple of those little scares.
Yep.
And her numbers are okay? What are her numbers?
I didn't get her specific. My wife just told me they fit in the ratio. I'll have to get those
That's good.
from her.
Well, that's good. So then we watch that. And the good news, you can watch that. You can watch that, and she's young, and these numbers hopefully will recover even better. And as I said, we're around, and I'm pushing very hard to get it into what I call first line patients like your daughter.
Yeah. Daniel, what's your daughter's name?
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Has Charlotte had the opportunity to speak with kids her own age who've gone through the same thing?
Yes, we've been very fortunate with a couple of individuals, primarily through the physical therapy side of things, because there's a community here in Northern Virginia that has gone through this before, and so it's just, it's such a rare cancer, and especially for girls, and we've been fortunate to have some fortunately athletes that she's been able to look up to and follow behind.
That's fantastic. I think it's one of the most important things, particularly for kids, but it's true of adults too, to be able to talk to other people who've gone through it or are going through it, so you don't feel, quite as out of step with everybody else. Daniel, I'm grateful to you for coming on. I hope you'll come back and keep us posted.
Absolutely. I've been
Thank,
watching since almost this time last year.
great. Thank you. That's the whole time. We started a year ago. Grateful to you. Bruce, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Unmute. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind for Gretchen and the doctor.
Hi, I'm Pueblo, Colorado, and I'm currently fighting cholangiocarcinoma for about a year. It was stage 4 a year ago. Discovered 2A lying in the hospital last July, not wanting to watch hospital television. Um, one of the things that jumped out at me is I'm stage 4, so obviously it wasn't caught early. And I wonder, because I get these cancer antigen tests now, which are not good numbers. So why isn't that part of a regular checkup, especially for somebody of my age, somebody, 65 plus? It seems to me a simple test that might clue a doctor in a whole lot earlier. I'm kind of disappointed with annual exams and stuff because it's 5 minutes and a cloud of dust, and they don't even take your blood pressure the correct way.
Yeah.
Um,
Bruce, are you being treated now?
yes, I'm
How's
on the third phase of chemo.
okay, doctor?
So, yeah, so you're absolutely right. And we started the show where HHS and the current Secretary Kennedy is going to support screening. And the screening is exactly right. I'm sure you had a CA level, right, Bruce? That's
Yeah.
the one of the blood tests, and probably there's another thing called CA 19.9. Those are simple blood tests. And if they go up, just like a PSA, we know there's something wrong. And if we also have now a cell-free DNA, so what's happened is this evolution of science has happened. And this is not like last week or last year, the last 10 years. We haven't caught up in our system. We sort of stuck in a sort of rote, here's the rule book, and let's just do what we do. And as you said, sadly, when you go for your checkup, it's a cloud of dust. But these tests can be done. You can go to a lab and have these tests done. And the earlier we catch it, now cholangiocarcinoma is very much like a pancreatic cancer. It's within the liver, and I'm sure you're getting the chemo that everybody uses. Having said that, we have I know of some doctors and some clinical trials, especially ones in the UK now and in Hong Kong, where, cholangiocarcinoma is very high incidence in the patient population in Hong Kong, where the results are very exciting with regard to the immunotherapy programs. So what's happened is, one, we need to screen. Two, the science is here, it's been here for a long time. Three, we need to change this dogma. We need to actually have a whole new world of looking from even the regulators' perspective. and not push this chemo radiation that has been where we've been for the last 45 years. And really, everybody has been trained in this way right now. So you bring up a good point, and I hope you're doing well. And if not, there are a lot of clinical trials in cholangiocarcinoma, which I'd urge you to go look at.
I'll search for those. Yeah, I'm doing well. The mass, which actually isn't in anything, it's between my liver, pancreas, and gallbladder.
Right, in your bile ducts, where the connection is between the liver. But I think, as I said, immunotherapy has a real chance for that kind of tumor, because that tumor hides, actually. So there's a way of exposing that tumor and then getting the natural killer cells and T cells towards it. So again, I urge you to go look at the clinical trials that's out there.
Bruce,
Okay.
thank you, and we're all pulling for you, and I know I can sense your frustration, and I understand why, but I also sense your determination, which is great. So thank you, and best of luck to you. I want to end on an upbeat note for everybody. As we said, Gretchen is a trainer and a coach and a great athlete, and here she is number 11, please, doing her thing. Gretchen, when's that from?
That was Saturday.
Yeah.
This past Saturday. So
you're kind of badass, Gretchen.
I will say that I have been feeling very good and very happy that I can stay active. I might have overdone it the past 5 days or so.
Yeah.
And I do need to remember that I am going through cancer treatment and calm down a little bit. But yeah, I've been very lucky that I've been able to stay really active. And if you don't mind, I just want to thank Dr. Soon-Shiong and Dr. Sender and all the people at Immunity Bio that have been so supportive of me. And Mark, I want to thank you for kind of being in the forefront here of trying to share information and education about the BioShield and with Dr. Soon-Shiong. And I think that the more people that know about it and maybe start to demand it, maybe things can move a little bit faster so that all of these people, like these callers that we've had, can have access to it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'm honored to be part of it. And the goal here is to have a discussion about everything having to do with cancer, all treatments, all possibilities, all awareness of the old ways of doing things aren't always the best ways of doing things. And this is an area where people need to be willing to think anew and must think anew. So we're really grateful to you for coming on. Are you still posting on TikTok?
I am.
Where can people find your stuff?
I'm my name or my handle, I don't know what you call it on TikTok, is Gretch Mick. And I'm also posting a little bit more on X now. I've had a few people encourage me to post on X, so I've been doing that as well.
And Instagram too, or no?
A little bit on Facebook and Instagram. I'm posting a little bit here and there, but I mostly wanted to reach out to those other communities. And not so much like every person I went to high school with on Facebook. So, but it's been very therapeutic in a weird kind of way. And so I plan on continuing to post. And, especially as I'm getting all these positive blood results back. So I'm doing blood work every Monday. I'm getting these negative circulating tumor DNA tests and all of these things. I will continue to post those results.
All right. Well, maybe even on episodes that you're not on, we'll just end every show like Letterman used to have his moment of Zen. Maybe we'll just end with you doing some weight work or
no, that's okay.
Kickboxing or whatever it is. We're very grateful to you for being on, and again, all inspired by your spirit and the combination you have of soul and head in navigating this. It's really inspirational for all of us, whether we're going through dealing with cancer or not. It's truly inspirational. So very grateful to you.
Thank you.
Okay. And Doctor, thank you. We'll be back next Tuesday night, same time. And of course, this episode will be on YouTube and on X. So if you want to share it with others, please do that. And please, of course, like and subscribe and become part of this community as we continue to grow and try to do the same thing every week, but provide information and provide comfort and to build a community around dealing with all these issues. So thank you for watching. And the doctor and I will see you next week. Thank you. Thank you, Gretchen.